Hello. Today is the 18th of April 2023, and we'll talk about three architects, Carme Pinos, Jan Kaplicky, and Giuseppe Terragni. We'll start with Carme Pinos, a remarkable Catalan architect who was remarkable working together with her husband, Enric Miralles, and then alone after both, she separated from Enric Miralles and after the death of Enric Miralles. But they separated, of course, before Enric Miralles died. You can find her website here. She's very active and she builds significantly, and she's an example. Carme Pinos. I hope I pronounce her name correctly, because I have a problem, because in Spain, as you know, there is Spanish and then there is Catalan. A remarkable lady architect, and we can learn a lot from her. I just show now some images of her works, and then we'll go in detail. She also built in Guadalajara, in Mexico, and in Vienna, in Austria, and maybe in other places. This is an older presentation I prepared, and it's possible in the meantime she built some other things. She also builds furniture and all kinds of things. Like a good architect, she can build anything. In her office, here she is with Enric Miralles, a remarkable architect who unfortunately died young, at 45, I think, of a brain tumor. One of the best architects of the last years of the 20th century, no doubt. So important that I felt tempted to offer him the immaterial prize, the other Pritzker Prize, post-mortem, because he does deserve it. He did deserve it, and in a way, Carme Pinos deserved it too, and she might still get it, because she worked together with Enric Miralles. He didn't work alone. Anyway, this is perhaps the most important work they did together, the Igualada Cemetery in Barcelona. And I don't know exactly, what Enric Miralles did and what Carme Pinos did. They worked together. This is their work. And this is a vignette that Carme Pinos did. And she always does. When she does a project, she essentializes the project through a little sketch, a vignette. Very similar to this one, you are going to see others. So this work, which I consider as important as the Brion Cemetery by Carlos Scarpa, although very different work, it was part of a competition to replace an older cemetery. Enric Miralles and Carme Pinos envisioned a new type of cemetery that began to consider those that were laid to rest, as well as the families that still remained. After 10 years of construction, the Igualada Cemetery outside of Barcelona, Catalonia, Spain, was completed in 1994 as a place of reflection and memories. Now I'll show some images of this very moving architecture, because that's what it is. It's not a place to give illusions. It's not a place that is melodramatically forcing you to cry. It's a place austere and maybe even severe, which looks at death with the necessary seriousness. So the Igualada Cemetery is a project that challenges the traditional notions of what makes a cemetery. Miralles and Pinos conceptualized the poetic ideas of a cemetery for the visitors to begin to understand and accept the cycle of life as a link between the past, the present, and the future. It's understood by the architects to be a city of the dead, where the dead and the living are brought closer together in spirit. As much as the Igualada cemetery is a place for those to be laid to rest, it is a place for those to come and reflect in the solitude and serenity of the Catalonian landscape. Yes, this is my opinion, that this work is not inferior to the famous work, the Brion Cemetery by Carlos Carpa, and I consider both great works of architecture that reflect poetically, seriously, intensely about what we call death. This is the plan of the cemetery, and interesting in a way that it's almost envisioned as a human body in plan. This I call architecture. It's a creation. It's an original statement. It's not arrogant. It's not modest. It's both. It's infused with poetry. Is not afraid to take risks. It's art. Because before we build a cemetery or we envision a cemetery, we normally we should ask, what is death? Do we know what death is? Do we turn our backs on death? We cannot do that. I forgot who, Jefferson, maybe, who said that, there are two things you cannot escape, the taxes and death. I mean, the taxes, the financial, the taxes, TAXEC. Anyway, not a very poetical statement, perhaps, but in a way, perhaps true. Now, they also designed the Olympic, for the Olympic city in 1992 in Barcelona. They designed some interesting things together. These pergolas, I find them astonishing. And I always ask myself, why are they as they are? And I neglected at the time to read the name of the avenue. It's Icaria. I imagine from Icarus. And if so, then all of a sudden the pergolas make sense. They are like broken wings. Very interesting work, very dramatic, very expressionistic, and Enric Miralles was not considered a deconstructivist. And this work is not really a deconstructivist work, but in a way it is. So these are the pergolas, courageously and generously built by the Catalans in Barcelona for the Olympics. Broken wings. I would say it's unnecessarily pessimistic. I don't know. I mean, the longing for the sun that Icarus, the son of Daedalus, had is not pessimistic. It's true. His wings melted down and he fell, but the aspiration was and is noble. And I think these pergolas do connect in a narrative way with the name of the avenue. Otherwise, I wouldn't understand why they made them like this. But I admire the work very much, because it's not a work made to please, it's a work to move you, to stir up your emotions, to make you less indifferent. If architecture can do this, it accomplishes a lot. So Enric Miralles and Carme Pinos, or Carme Pinos and Enric Miralles, still young architects. Bravo to them, teaching us what architecture is or should be, making a statement. Now, a footbridge, pedestrian footbridge, 1991, 1999. They separated before 1999, but the work began when they were still together. I go rather quickly because, as I said, I have to make two other presentations and I do have to leave. Well, I think we'll have the time in about 1 hour and a half. We see here, so these, slight or not so slight, deformations. Why are they there? Well, maybe they are reminders that in the end we'll arrive at this everywhere in this world and for everybody. Let's not imagine that things will remain smooth and polished and clean and continuous. Destruction is connected with construction. So what goes up goes down. Maybe the awareness of both is important. Another vignette done by Carme Pinos. And these are, that's how they used to make their projects. And I find it very telling. Very rigorous, but very artistic and poetic. And in these fragmentations, one can read a lot, in my opinion. It's not the typical, planning that the students are taught to do architecture in a certain way. No, it's something else. Because reality cannot be ad infinitum, cannot be continuously represented in a placid way as usually projects are. But this is close actually to the truth of the perception of reality and its representation according to those correct perceptions. But again, this is not how students in architecture are taught to represent a project. The seafront one, this is done, I think it's done just by her. I'm a little bit confused because there is also work done that he did, Miralles, together with his second wife, Benedetta Taliabue. Not very dissimilar. But here we see the vignette by Carme Pinos. This is not how Benedetta Taliabue works. This is how Carme Pinos works. So obviously she was involved in this work. Carme Pinos to open the Bartlett School of Architecture summer show. I envy these people. I mean, I envy them when I think about, much less exuberant events in other parts of the world when an architecture exhibition takes place. And Bartlett is indeed a special school. And you understand the importance of Carme Pinos if she was invited to open such an exhibition in London. A master plan for the historic center of Saint-Dizier, France, but no picture, sorry. The department's building of the new campus of the Vienna University of Economics and Business in Austria. This is right next door, just a few meters away from Zaha Hadid's library. The works are very different, but the work by Carme Pinos is in no way inferior. It's a different kind of architecture, but it's an excellent architecture. And the fact that she was invited to build in Vienna says again a lot. And across the space on the left is a building by Peter Cook, one of the founding members of Archigram. So you see here the building by Zaha Hadid, the library, and here is the building by Carme Pinos. We also see that she was not and is not indifferent to what we call ornament, because this is ornamental in its essence, this treatment of the facade, abstracted as it is. Because when we use the word ornament, we shouldn't just think of something that, it's not a decoration. The ornament is not a decoration. It's not something you hang on a white wall, and borrowed from so-called the past. You could have the structure itself be ornamental. The whole building could be an ornament. And here you see the three buildings. This is Zaha Hadid here. This is Carme Pinos. And this is Peter Cook. Not bad. Two women, two ladies, and one man or one gentleman. Very nice. But we also have a Dame and we have a Sir, because he's a Sir Peter Cook, and she, Zaha Hadid, was and still is Dame Zaha Hadid. Bravo to her. So here on the bottom, Carme Pinos, then Zaha Hadid. Here is also an excellent building. Unfortunately, I don't know the name of the authors. Now, Cube One Tower in Guadalajara, Mexico, an excellent tower that she built. And in my opinion, actually, some of her tall buildings are, I almost feel tempting, like saying they are better than Zaha Hadid's towers, which are a little bit too mundane and too slick. But the work of Carme Pinos are sculptural, but without convenient, how to say, compromises made in the name of slickness and polishness and mundanity. And she built two in Guadalajara, and we are going to see the other as well. It's not very tall, but a tall building doesn't have to be too tall to be called, architecture, or to be called even a tower. If it has the inner monumentality, the inner height. Carme Pinos, Guadalajara. Here she is again with her building, and here is a plan of the building. Not afraid again of dynamic lines, of fluidities, but it's a different kind of fluidity. Now that we saw the building of her and the building of Zaha in close proximity, we could say that the fluidities of Carme Pinos are different than Zaha Hadid's, because she combines them, as here, also with triangulations, with angular elements, and there is a certain level of sculptural drama that almost points towards some kind of an angst, perhaps. Anyway, moving forward. Now, Cube One in Guadalajara, we already saw. This is the vignette, the conceptual vignette to show the essence of the project. Now, Cube Two. They are called cubes, but they are not really cubes. This is much taller, also in Guadalajara. This is the conceptual vignette. As you can see, it's different from this one, but you can tell it's the same architect. Taller, as I said, and we are going to see also its neighbors, in my opinion, inferior as architecture compared to the tower built by Carme Pinos. This is her work. Not bad. Not bad at all. I think this building should be seen also by former President Donald Trump, who didn't have too much respect for the Mexicans, so much so that he thought of building a tall and thick wall between the United States and Mexicans. But he was wrong, because Mexico has very proud people, very talented people, very talented architects, an old culture. and they are aware of it. Yes, there are also problems, it's true, but then there are also problems in the United States as well. Very much so. Anyway, this is what they build in Guadalajara. Uh, in Guadalajara, not just in Guadalajara, in Mexico, they value good architecture and they invite very famous architects to build there. Tadawando being one of them. He built at least two projects or two buildings in Mexico, Tadawando, and others. Guadalajara, especially, has a collection of great buildings built by great architects. Bravo to them. Now, how former President Donald Trump wanted to separate the United States from the people who build such buildings is beyond me. University Economics and Business, this is a project that was not built yet, at least. We saw one in Vienna, but this was not built yet. Restoration of the back facade of the La Boqueria market in Barcelona. Interestingly, one was done by her, and another one was completed at least by Benedetta Taliabue, the second wife of Enric Miralles. I love these markets that bring, architectural drama to the city, and it's a space of, human exchange, of social interaction, and I think they do the job, and this one does the job. It's a catalyst for human interaction, and this is important. Carme Pinos. Here she is, a proud lady. I think all women architects can get inspired from an architect like her. Here they are as young people. Carme Pinos on the left, Enric Miralles on the right. And here she is with well, I wish I should have had another picture. Anyway, with some furniture that she designed. Cube 2, this one we already saw. We see a few more pictures. It's just this tower that she built, not the one on the left and not the one on the right, just this one. But it's the best, in my opinion. Architecture deserves its name only if it is creative. If it is not creative, it doesn't even deserve the name architecture. I think it is as simple as this. An initial sketch. But this is the cube 1, not cube 2, as you know by now, because you already saw the plans. Now, a single family house in the district of Alcarca in Barcelona, also built by herself without Enric Miralles. It's a good building with a lot of concrete, yes, but there is the roughness of concrete, which is expressed poetically, and the vignette that she always does for her work. It's an excellent building. Some would say, well, this is not a house. Of course it is. It doesn't have to have sloping roofs necessarily in order to be a house. Furnitures, shelves for books that she designed. Now, Zaragoza Arquitectura, España, Caixa Forum, another building she built. I don't know if you can see well the section. Here is the building. We see here as well the presence of ornament, discreet but perceptible, and the architecture reminds one a little bit somehow of Marcel Breuer's The Whitney Museum of American Art in New York City. It's a good building. So there are those who think that women cannot be good architects. It's totally wrong. Here we have an example that opposes that, mistaken perception. Carme Pinos, Aixa Forum. It's a summer house that she designed in Mexico, also in Guadalajara, give us a sense of spaciousness and brightness in a timeless and comfortable interior. I didn't write those words. I took them from a website, but this is the house. There are elements of, conventionally named modern architecture, but there is also the stone wall. And it's good that there is stone, and there is also wood, and there is a flowing space, and there are opposing openings in the building. It's in Mexico, it's in Guadalajara, or maybe the city is in the far distance, maybe a little bit far away from the city. Anyway, as you can see, the Mexicans like the work of Carme Pinos. Now some designed pieces, furniture. For most of her projects, she designs also the furniture, an exterior bench. This is for the Caixa Forum building, a table for the same for Caixa Forum. Caixa Forum, the same. This is for the house in Mexico, in Guadalajara, a desk. Sorry, I'm not going to talk about Benedetta Tagliabue now. We stop the presentation now on Carme Pinos, and we go to the second presentation on Jan Kaplicky. Well, why did we talk about Carme Pinos today? Because she was born on this day of April. And now we talk about another architect also born on the 18th of April. And that is a very interesting architect who deserves himself to be known, and that is Jan Kaplicky. Let's start the show. So Jan Kaplicky, 1937-2009. He was born on the 18th of April, 1937. Was a neo-futuristic, interesting wording. I mean, the word futuristic should take care also of what is neo, but a neo-futuristic is an amplification of what the word futuristic is meant to mean. a Czech architect who spent a significant part of his life in the United Kingdom. He was the leading architect behind the innovative design office Future Systems. He was best known for the neo-futuristic Selfridges building in Birmingham, England, and the media center at Lord's Cricket Ground in London. This was the man, and he was married to a remarkable architect herself, Amanda Levete, and I hope to have pictures with both here. She continues to build very interesting buildings. So Jan Kaplicky, a charming man. Some drawings. But let's read what Sir Richard Rogers wrote about him. Jan was not just a visionary architect, he was a draftsman of genius, wrote Sir Richard Rogers. His spirited drawings were at the same time intricate and incredibly economical, able to communicate his space-age visions with just a few strokes of the pen. And, this statement, generous as it is, came from a very knowledgeable man, himself a remarkable architect, Sir Richard Rogers. These are a few drawings by Jan Kaplicky, and they are just as Sir Richard Rogers described them. Neo-futuristic architecture, but he also built. He was not happy to just draw, he also built, and built well. Do they look like incredibly economical, as Sir Richard Rogers said? Maybe not, but I'm inclined to believe Richard Rogers. Jan Kaplicky. A remarkable Czech architect between other remarkable Czech architects. And I just read recently, a few days ago, that Putin thinks that the Czechs, Russians, could drink beer instead of vodka. Unbelievable, unbelievable. I hope he doesn't attempt to bomb also Prague. So drawings by Jan Kaplicky. There is technology, of course, but there is also bio, there is life. You say space age. Well, maybe instead of going to Mars together with Mr. Elon Musk, we can build Mars building, so to speak, on Earth. A house for a helicopter pilot. It was not built 1979. The design for a house for a helicopter pilot features a bright pink cuboid with spindly metal legs and a rooftop helipad, while house for Giuseppe K, he designed another house, is a low-rise bulbous structure that almost looks like it has been designed for the surface of Mars. Well, I just mentioned Mars, forgetting that this text was part of the presentation. I don't know if you can see it well here. Here is the building for the helicopter pilot. And, his revered vehicle can land on the house. Actually, last night I had a dream about being in a helicopter. At one point, the helicopter lost its balance. I was a little bit afraid, and I got up before the helicopter fell. God forbid. That's because I was thinking of going to Venice, to the Venice Biennial, which will start in about 1 month. Exactly on 1 month, I think on the 18th of May. So this is the house for the helicopter pilot. a project that he did. Now, Haas for Joseph K. I like any name which has letter K in it just by itself. It reminds me, of course, of Kafka. And there it is in the distant landscape. Now, Future Systems. This is a firm that he started. And let's read about it. Future Systems was a London-based architectural and design practice formerly headed by directors Jan Kaplicky and Amanda Lebede. I already mentioned her. Future Systems was founded by Kaplicky and David Nixon after working with Dennis Lasden, Norman Foster, Renzo Piano, and Richard Rogers in 1979. What a series of great names in architecture. The work of Future Systems can be classified within the British high-tech architects as either bionic architecture or amorphous organic shapes, sometimes referred to as blob architecture. Compared to his peers, Kaplicky was the avant-garde incarnate, relentlessly pursuing the new thing, refusing to settle into some predictable and comfortable architectural niche, not to say cliche. We are going to see some works done by Future Systems. This is a house from 1993, maybe a little less radical than some of the proposals that were not built we saw, but still an interesting house. Yes, you could say too much glass, but it's a glass that is divided. In fact, it almost looks like glass blocks. It has something Japanese about it, and it's very well built, and it's mysteriously new, surrounded by buildings that are not mysteriously new. And a tree that would normally, leave us speechless about the, creativity of nature, which is constant, although it is assaulted by our human ambitions. But that nature doesn't make mistakes, not even when I'm sorry, when the big fish eats the small fish. Maybe even then it doesn't make mistakes, maybe, but it does look like it does. I'm sorry, something is wrong with my voice. This is the house built by Future Systems. I read something about the children, the space, enjoying. You see a lot of toys there. The world of the adults welcomes the world of the children, and that's good. I think toys. Maybe we should return to the floor. Maybe the Japanese have long lives because they eat closer to the floor, and their tables, traditionally were not at 85 centimeters or 90 centimeters from the floor, but very, very low, that you wouldn't even need chairs. I think if the whole world would be populated with toddlers, it would be a better world. If Mr. Putin would sit like a toddler on the floor, perhaps he would have second thoughts about bombing Ukraine. Unfortunately, he doesn't. Toys, and toys again. The toys of what could I say? Innocence, the toys of childhood, the toys of dreaming, the toys of playing. And the tree. West India Quay Bridge in London, a great bridge, 1996. Here it is. And it's floating, it seems, on these things, and what do I see here? I see another toy. It's like a little car but it's hard for me to imagine that, who knows, maybe for the sake of the picture, a toy was placed here on the bridge. Anyway, Future Systems, London, a bridge. Now, this is one of the most important works. I'm talking about Future Systems, a firm which does not exist any longer. Lord's Cricket Ground Media Center, 1999. It was an existing cricket, ground, but they built this part here, which is, new. I don't know if it's new, but it is new. And it functions very well. And I like the fact that in Great Britain, they are not afraid to marry the old with the new. Jan Kaplicky, Future Systems. I understood it functions very well. I read words of great admiration about the building. And here is the drawing that initiated it. The media center. That's all they built here, not the whole thing. It might be needed, to do some acrobatics in order to clean or to repair, who knows what, those windows, but space age doesn't come easily. And this is maybe the most famous work by them, by Future Systems, and Birmingham Selfridge's department store. Here it is. I could forgive it for being just a department store, but which shows that you can do good architecture even with a department store. Why not? I mean, the function of the building is prosaic, but the building is not, it's poetic. Jan Kaplicky, maybe with, no, with Amanda Levitt, Future Systems, Birmingham. Architecture does matter. If you make an exciting building, you energize people, you make them, more adventurous, more open, more enthusiastic, and it's worth it. If you make a banal building, then, apathy is the result, and life is not as intense as it should be. Because Mark Aurelius, the great Roman emperor, was right. The problem is, not so much to fear death, but to fear not starting to live. And you don't start to live when you are afraid of, being creative, being exuberant, being, doing things that say yes to life and not no to life. And somebody else said, well, I read it, Pascal, but maybe it was not by him, because on the web you can read all kinds of things attributed to who knows who. But the saying has value. The problem is not to add years to your life, but to add life to your years. And a good building, I think, adds life to your years. Because it intensifies it. Future Systems. Now you see the old church and the new building by Future Systems. They do not, try to create a so-called, contextualized harmony. You can create an harmony through contrast, and that's exactly what the building by future systems did and does. I see some echoes here a little bit here from Johnson Wax in Wisconsin by Frank Lloyd Wright. Now, Enzo Ferrari Museum in Modena, Italy, built for the prestigious car maker, Ferrari. Here it is, Jan Kaplicky. He did this after he separated from Amanda Levete. I understood they continue to collaborate even after the separation. I don't know how they were able to do this. I wouldn't be able to continue to cooperate with a woman I loved, and she loved me, and we broke up. But architects sometimes can do this. Maybe because sometimes they are not so, I don't know, emotional as some other people, maybe. Not to call them otherwise. I mean, differently. And here are models of Ferraris inside the building by Jan Kaplicky. Ferrari had a good taste in choosing, the architect. And that's the building, yellow as it is. Nice, special, different, just as the cars are. Unfortunately, perhaps equally expensive. Ferrari had money, so. But we see again harmony through contrast. You bring in the new with the violence of the new in a context which otherwise is rather sleeping. How banal these other cars, the so-called normal cars, look like, if you compare them with the exceptionalism of Ferraris. They are probably envious, and I have compassion for them, actually, for those so-called normal cars. I'm not a fan of cars, but I admire beauty in whatever form it comes. So I see here apparently there was a building there prior to constructing this new museum for Ferrari. Interesting. I would have kept it somehow. Or was it kept? Maybe it was, but now I'm confused because that yellow totalizing roofing didn't show signs of having this building with sloping roofs. Or could it be that I'm a little bit confused what's going on here. Anyway, I should not insist and betray all the imperfections of my presentation, but I like the tensions between the old and the new. Is that Le Corbusier in that car? Maybe not, but there is a picture with Le Corbusier in an obsolete, although antique car. And antique cars are seductive. Almost anything antique. Actually, what becomes an antique is questionable. I don't think things should be valued because they are antiques or not. What is not to pass should not pass. In other words, the past, which is significant, doesn't pass, in my opinion. And thus, anything from the most remote past should not become an antique or an antiquity. This is the plan, obviously. Did he do this sketch? I don't know. Is this his handwriting? I don't know. I mean, I'm talking about Jan Kaplicky. Ferrari. Now, the National Public Library in Prague, I think he won the competition, but it was not built, unfortunately. But it was built a smaller version in a different way. But it's too bad this building was not built. It should have been built and it should be built. Here it is, the Czech National Public Library in Prague. Not bad at all. Much more interesting than the famed Seattle Library by Rem Koolhaas. But it was not built. And it might be that it was because he died. He died, I think, at 72. Now look at his building and look at the buildings behind it. What do they have in common? Nothing. Well, it made it on a stamp in the Republic, Czech Republic. And it was built a smaller version. Is this the small octopus bus stop in Brno? It's just a bus stop. So the library became a bus stop. I mean, the idea of the library was reduced in scale and became this, a bus stop. At least as a bus stop, it survived. It's not bad as a bus stop either. In Brno, not in Prague. And a visionary project for New York City. We see the skyline of New York City in the background. Well, it is as if it came from Mars to the Earth or from who knows where. A visionary project, Jan Kaplicky. And his grave. This is the last picture of this short presentation on a very good Czech architect. What is that sphere doing there? Maybe the sphere is beyond its symbolism as a reference to the divine, to the heavens. It's also a symbol of change, of the new, of becoming. So happy birthday, Jan Kaplicky. And now we go to the third architect we'll talk about today on the 18th of April, and that is a remarkable, equally remarkable Italian architect, Giuseppe Terragni. I don't know if I placed the accent linguistically correctly, but if I didn't, I ask for forgiveness. I don't know Italian, and it's a shame. Giuseppe Terragni, 1904-1943, so he died at 39. Let's remember that Louis Kahn became Louis Kahn around 55. This man died at 39, but he was already a significant presence in the history of modern architecture. Let's read a little bit about him. Giuseppe Terragni, as you see, born April 18th, and that's the reason we talk about him today, was an Italian architect who worked primarily under the fascist regime of Benito Mussolini and pioneered the Italian modern movement under the rubric of rationalism. His most famous work is the Casa del Fascio, built in Como, northern Italy, which was begun in 1932 and completed in 1936, so before the Second World War started. It was built in accordance with the international style of architecture and frescoed by abstract artist Mario Radice. In 1938, at the behest of Mussolini's fascist government, Terragni designed the Danteum, an unbuilt monument to the Italian poet Dante Alighieri, structured around the formal divisions of his greatest work, the Divine Comedy. This is a remarkable project, was not built, but it is a remarkable example of what I call and other people called and might call narrative architecture. This was the man, handsome like most Italian men, but dressed better than Renzo Piano. I don't know what's wrong with Renzo Piano. I mean, I'm sure he has excellent taste, but he dresses sometimes almost as badly as Pablo Picasso. Giuseppe Terragni, progettare la cultura. Progettare la cultura, this is the whole point. Architecture belongs to culture, not to civilization, as Alvar Aalto said, and it's true. Drawings by Giuseppe Terragni. He was also a generous man. He designed, well, he brought into reality, so to speak, a drawing by his equally famous countryman, Santelia. Santelia left many brilliant drawings, but he didn't build. But he left a project, a drawing, a drawing for a monument, and Giuseppe Terragni built it, well, together with other people, but he managed to build it. These are images from the Danteum project. We are going to see it more in detail at the end. This is the project for the Casa del Fascio in Como. Now I just show drawings. Facciata dei primi due piani. I guess I couldn't find a lot of information in English, so then I went to Wikipedia in Italian, and I should have translated these names, these titles, but I didn't. I asked for forgiveness. This is an early work from 1926, 1927. Kind of it's a hotel, but he just did. I don't know. I think the first floor or the first floors of this hotel, and nothing exceptional yet, perhaps. But you still see, refinement, and as such, the science of what we call architecture. And here we see the spheres that we saw. Well, the sphere that we saw on the grave stone of Jan Kaplicky, but here is in Italy by Giuseppe Terragni. Novo Comum di Como, 1927, 1929. I don't know what the function is, like maybe housing, a housing project, with some elements, maybe, I don't know if inspired by Eric Mendelssohn or not, but I see aesthetical relationship between some works by Eric Mendelssohn and this work by Giuseppe Terragni. It stands. It was not destroyed by the highly beneficial Second World War, which Vladimir Putin tries now to duplicate. Giuseppe Terragni. So there is rationalism, but there is also a touch of expressionism here in the corner. Eric Mendelssohn was an expressionist architect. Giuseppe Terragni is considered a rationalist architect, but the frontiers between the two are not so rigid like the Chinese wall. There are emotional elements, let's call them so, in rationalist architecture. And there is reason also behind the works of what we call expressionist architecture. Because this was not an accident. The architectonic drama in the corner was searched for and found. Monumento ai caduti della one, guerra, first World War in Erba, 1926-1932. An interesting work, actually, and you wouldn't expect it. I myself was surprised when I discovered it, that it is by Giuseppe Terragni. Using a different kind of architectural language, using stone. It's monumental, it's grave, it's romantic. Um, you could have placed it even earlier in time. So you see, the so-called rationalists had a large palette of expressions. Otherwise, the symmetry of the building, we understand why would have been, and it was admired by the fascists and by Mussolini. Isn't it curious, perhaps, or maybe it's not curious, that Italians who are supposed to be emotional, they have a very strong so-called rationalistic architecture. Italian rationalism is a well-known movement in architecture, but they are highly emotional, the Italians. Monumento ai caduti di Como, 1931-1932, and this is the work based on the drawing by Antonio Santeglia. And it was built by Giuseppe Terragni. He developed the vision of Santeglia. I think the project was sustained or promoted also by Marinetti. But again, the vision of the monument belonged to Santeglia, not to Giuseppe Terragni. What Terragni did was just a sign of affection and of continuity, a collaboration over time, because Antonio Santeglia died young at 28. Also in Como, like his famous Casa del Fascio, which we are going to see. Santeglia, Marinetti, Prampolini, Attilo e Giuseppe Terragni, uniti dal monumento ai caduti. So it started with Santeglia, the vision, and then the poet Marinetti, and then perhaps the others, architects, together with Terragni, united, they built this monument. On the left, you see the vision of Antonio Santeglia, and on the right, we see the building as built, and you can see the building is not at all removed from what Antonio Santeglia envisioned. It's almost an ad literam, building. A building that didn't try to betray what Santeglia did at all. And I admire this, because Giuseppe Terragni was a very original architect himself. But here he understood to respect as much as possible the vision of Antonio Santeglia, and he succeeded. This is the drawing by Antonio Santeglia. And I keep saying to students and to everybody, including to myself, even if you don't have clients, even if you don't have commissions, nothing can stop you from having architectural or expressing architectural visions in whatever form: drawing, digital modeling, models, sketches, whatever. Let the spirit of architecture flourish if you are an architect. Interesting picture here with that horse in front of the monument. I don't know, maybe this is one of a scene from a possible strike. In Italy, there are all kinds of strikes all the time. A very noble monument, architecturally speaking. Giuseppe Terragni had an important role in erecting this building. A tomb in Como, 1932, and the tomb it is. Domus Eterna. He built two, actually. This is one of them. Giuseppe Terragni. And you see the second one on the right that he built. Now what is this? Sala O della Mostra della Rivoluzione Fascista a Roma, 1932. Well, these posters and they are alarming in a way, but you'll see the building is, the interior is rather unsettling through its, dynamic distortions and drama. So you wonder, it's not the symmetrical certitude of the ideology. It's something else. It's the vision of an artist, of a poet who was perhaps maybe confused politically, as many artists are. Poets, artists in general, are not very astute in the field of politics, and they make sometimes I'm not trying to excuse Terragni. There were other important Italian architects, and not only architects. Marinetti was a poet. They laughed, they identified themselves with the fascists. Even Philip Johnson, admired Hitler, admired fascism. Well, those who commented afterwards about him thought that he loved them. Well, he himself apparently said, Philip Johnson, that of course he admired them when you saw those blonde men with black leather jackets. Philip Johnson being gay. Anyway, Mostra della Rivoluzione Fascista, Roma. And here they are. This scene is strikingly different from the architecture inside the building as built by Giuseppe Terragni. Requested probably an atmosphere of great tension, of enthusiastic energies, to the point of becoming Dionysian and thus uncontrolled. But look at those two X's. And by the way, did you notice that letter X, well, it's fashionable in general, but Elon Musk is naming increasingly his enterprises using letter X. Now we see the letter X here, and I don't know what it refers to. Maybe it's the 20th century, but no, these two X's at the corners of the buildings seem to point in another direction. I don't know. Mostra della Rivoluzione, and the building is rather courageous, aesthetically speaking. Look at the buildings across the street, and in the background, look how people are dressed, look at the car, and look at the building designed by Giuseppe Terragni. The building is strikingly modern, even by today's standards. Interesting work. Now, Albergo Posta, postal office in Como. Albergo Posta, Giuseppe Terragni, I think he also did some kind of renovation here. It is, I can't imagine him, building, a building like this from the very beginning. He just had some interventions, like any architect getting another job. Progetto per una villa con Darsena, 1932. Interesting house, actually. 1932, so 4 years or so after Villa Savoie. It was not built. But I like the plans. I like the plans because they are At least here, the crystallization of the plan is not conditioned by Its Majesty the car, like it happened at Villa Savoie. Another tomb, this one we already saw in Como, or did we? Or he built three? No, I think this was the second one. Yeah, they were in close proximity, in fact, across the alley from each other. This one interesting too, in a certain way. A serious meditation on what death is. Now, we arrive at his most famous work, Casa del Fascio in Como, 1932-1936. Here it is. I saw it. I was also very moved by the trees in front of it. I don't know if I have images here with those trees, very dramatic trees. Um, I mean, their silhouettes, and then behind them you see this, yeah, we could call it a rationalist building, Casa del Fascio. But you know, as opposed to Hitler, who advocated a different kind of white architecture through Albert Speer, in Italy, Benito Mussolini, he advocated an architect of the new, or a new architecture, still with a lot of whiteness. But it would be interesting, and maybe it was already done since everything was already written, to compare the aesthetics of Hitler and the aesthetics of Benito Mussolini. I mean, the aesthetics that they encouraged, advocated through their architects. Look at this handrail, is excellent. Again, a touch of rebelliousness, formal rebelliousness, because you would say, you know, that twisting fluidity is not quite rationalistic, and is not. But the building, yes, it could be so. It could be called so. And you see the cathedral or the church behind, and the buildings around it. It's a, you know, resolutely modern building, cubical as it is. It's very well done. And again, like in the case of Jan Kaplicky, we see harmony through contrast. Here we see also some soldiers. These are the plans of the building, Casa del Fascio in Como by Giuseppe Terragni, built before the war started. This is important to mention because it's possible that during the war he would not have built it in this way. Not just because maybe the money was not there. He still believed in a certain fascism that probably had almost nothing to do with the reality of what it actually was. And certainly not with the reality of war. It's hard for me to believe. I mean, even Marinetti with his rhetorics, you know, I don't think he truly loved war. I also don't think Heraclitus loved war, although he said war is the father of all things. But I don't think he imagined the war that is happening right now in Ukraine. Philosophers, poets, they idealize something that they actually don't know. But some of them died in the war, like Antonio Santelia. They like the energy of the war, the tension, the drama, the intensity, the involvement. But I don't think they love the horrors of war. Casa del Fascio, Giuseppe Terragni. There are all kinds of even art shows inside of it now. It's has nothing to do with the fascism, of course. And the building is rather Apollonian. You know, it's a building of peace. In fact, you could very well call it the house of peace. And the house of reason. This is not the house of the unreason that war is. And it's not even a dogmatic building, you know. We associate fascism with and the Nazis with fanaticism, the fanaticism of dogma. But this is not a building that shows that at all. It's a pleasant building, white as it is. It's not dogmatic, it's not oppressive, it's not totalitarian. Now, Casa Rustici a Milano, 1933-1935, in collaboration with Pietro Lingheri. Built, there are actually two sides united by those balconies. Interesting, this duality in a way. You know, you have a whole made of two halves, which are united in a certain way in this case. Because most architects exactly at the center, at the core, would not have opened up the building. This one is opened exactly there where you would expect the opposite. And it's kind of interesting because of it. It's one building made of twins, of two buildings. So it is through the fragility of balconies that he unites the two. So again, it's very unusual to have this kind of building where you can see the sky right through it at an intersection in the corner of a street or in the corner of two streets. Casa Toninello a Milano with the same other architect who collaborated with him, Pietro Lingheri. Another casa in Milan. Very interesting here is the slight deviation from the continuity of rectangularity. It's, you know, this angle here, which instead of being 180 degrees is, let's say, 170 degrees or something like this. And you see it here in plan. I'm talking about, you know, this side. But we see the duality here as well, reminding one of Goethe's words in Faust, alas, two souls are dwelling in my heart. Here we see two stairs. You know, we see the left, we see the right, we see the symmetry. But we see also short, you know, gestures at asymmetry, discrete. The glass blocks vacation house done for the Triennale in Milan in 1933. I don't know what happened to it. It was probably destroyed. Another monument to Roberto Sarfati. Um, Very interesting work. So when was this built? 1934. He had this side in him, you know, he worked well with, you know, so-called rationalist, you know, aesthetics, but he also worked well with heaviness. We saw previously another monument, and this one is in its rawness and in its earthiness and in its vitality. It would have been, I think, an inspiring force for Zaha Hadid, who claimed one time that that's exactly what she looked for an architecture which was raw, earthy, and vital. And this is exactly this. It's raw, it's earthy, and it's vital. Interesting monument by Giuseppe Terragni. Dark and heavy, as it should be for a monument. So you say, how come an architect who built the Casa del Fascio in its Apollonian whiteness, here he is, or maybe he didn't anticipate the effects of the elements on the stone? I don't know. I actually think that he premeditated this aesthetic, because I think he was aware of time, and he wasn't aware of Dante. He was aware of hell, and he was aware of these things in his project for the Danteum. Giuseppe Terragni. Excellent work. Another house, 1934, with the same architect, the same duality that we noticed in the previous works. Here also breaks the building exactly at the corner and creates some kind of openness. Here, the balconies are much smaller than in the previous example. I say it's unusual because in general, at the corner, you have the tendency to emphasize the corner, not to de-emphasize it. And here it is de-emphasized. Interesting work. I rush a little bit because I have the feeling that my laptop is dying. Will die soon. Casa Rustici, 1935. Nothing rustic. I see no rusticity here. I don't know why it is called so. But the balconies that he loved are present here too. Long corridors, external corridors uniting various parts of the building. A villa, 1935, 1937. Interesting villa. I confess, well, 7, 8 years after Le Corbusier built Villa Savoie, for me that year, 1928, when Le Corbusier built Villa Savoie, is a guiding mark to compare against it whatever other projects done by, or built works by other architects, and this is it's on pilotis itself, but the building is still very different from Villa Savoie, although it has some echoes coming from Le Corbusier. It's not so radical. It's not a manifesto as Le Corbusier's work was. You could maybe call it, with an approximation, linguistic approximation, a mellow manifest. Although manifests are usually not mellow, or maybe this is not a manifest. The cars are present here too. Sala, whatever is this, also with Pietro Linghieri. Sports arena. Palazzo Terragni, it was called after he died, Palazzo Terragni. Restored, was a school, I think. Or that sports arena, yeah, that's what it was. As opposed to Villa Savoie, about which Bernard Tschumi said at one moment that during the war or so, the only architectural thing about it was the state of decay it was in. Here, the state of decay is probably not the most glorious aspect of this building, but they restored it. I think Yeah, it's now it looks like a school with amphitheater. Maybe there are two different buildings that we saw. Graphic work, Villa Bianca. We built quite a number of villas and apartment buildings. Now, when I look at this, it reminds me of a dramatic canopy by Hans Hollein at the Albertina Museum in Vienna. But there are others who used. I wonder what the meaning of this is, if it has to have a meaning. Not necessarily, maybe. Asilo Santelia di Como. It's a school. I don't know why it is called asilo. Maybe it's for orphans. I don't know. But like in the case of that living room in that house by Jan Kaplicky, we can only welcome, the objects of innocence, the objects of childhood, the toys. Maybe we should fill the living room of the palaces of Vladimir Putin with toys, if we could, of course. Another casa, but no pictures. Another apartment building, lots of vegetation on the balconies because we need oxygen, we need ozone. Casa Giuliano, Frigerio, Terragni, 1939, 1940. He built a lot. And you see the architectural language is modern. And yet he's associated with fascists. We are approaching the end of this presentation. In 1938, he made this project, the Danteum a Roma, as an homage, an architectural homage to Dante Alighieri. The Danteum is an unbuilt architecture designed by Giuseppe Terragni and Pietro Linghieri. Sketches and drawings of the master give us the unfulfilled dream of Terragni for a monument to Dante, in which the Divine Comedy was projected in an architectural scheme. And now we see images from this project. Maybe it was supposed to be, in close proximity to the Colosseum. You have to read Dante in order to understand this project. It's a narrative architecture of complexity, of imagination, of poetry. It deserves study. But it shows the great potential of what we call narrative architecture, the Danteum by Giuseppe Terragni. I mean, look at these columns here, where there is a whole story about placing this tower, these columns of various diameter, the circle within squares themselves with different sides. I mean, the dimensions of the sides. It should have been built. And I think it should be built. I think a great firm or corporation even could be established that builds projects that were never built. It would be a very different world if we start building great projects by great architects who were never built. I don't have entrepreneurial skills, but I would be tempted towards something like this. And something like this was done actually because Saint Pierre Saint-Pierre de Firminy-Vert in Firminy-Vert in France, the church designed by Le Corbusier was built after Le Corbusier died. And it's a success, with the exception that it's immensely cold inside in February. I visited it in February and you die inside because of all that concrete. But otherwise, it's a great building and it was built after Le Corbusier died. The Danteum should be built as well. If not for Giuseppe Terragni, then for Dante. I have myself to study this project, you know, to be able to say something with some words about it. I look at these, you know, translucent columns and I wonder, you know, that's not how we expect the columns to be. Giuseppe Terragni meeting, so to speak, Dante. Now he met Dante. They are where one day we'll be ourselves. Maybe we'll meet them one day. Maybe Giuseppe Terragni will smile towards us and say, thank you for remembering me on the 18th of April, 2023. The Danteum, Inferno. And Inferno seems to be, and most of us, or some of us, are within the Inferno without knowing that we are in the Inferno. Purgatorio. Paradiso. That's it. Let's wish him happy birthday. And thank you for being here today. Unfortunately, I have the, it's incredible, you know, it makes me crazy Zoom, or is it me?